You're listening to the Unemployed Bartender Podcast with your host, Keith Carter.
They've already clicked off of the show.
You know, I haven't listened to many podcasts.
This is riveting for your listeners. You do realize this, right?
Yeah, I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
Do you put like little outtakes in the intro of your podcast?
All of this can be cut out because it's pretty much just a podcast. New episodes every Friday. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the UB Podcast. You know, chit chat.
It's fine.
In the beginning.
Right when you came on, I moved. I just breathed and my neck popped, and I was like,
I saw you
old.
I saw you exhale right as it popped in. So, how are you? I got my suit jacket on because we're gonna talk grown-up political talk tonight. So
yeah, no, that's great. I tried to be a little bit more casual, but no, I'm glad one of us is more.
I feel like we met in the middle because you wore your glasses and I didn't wear my glasses, but I wore my jacket. So
there you go.
Well, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you coming on because it's been, I don't know, like a few things have happened this week politically.
Yeah.
And I thought that maybe we, in a couple, 5-10 minutes, we could kind of hash it all out. And then
sure.
go home and just go on with our regular life. No,
sure.
It's been quite a bit. So I'd already had a plan to ask you to be on just to talk about the inauguration and Biden, that kind of transition over from what we've had into something that looks pretty good. If you watched the speech tonight, I don't know if it is the dichotomy that exists from him to Trump, or if I've been softened by all the shit that's gone on for the last year. But he's so empathetic, and I connect with him so much to Biden right now. When I listen to him speak, he really connects to me, and I really like that about that guy. And I don't know.
Yeah, he's very warm. He definitely has a warmth about him that has been absent in the leadership that we've had the last 4 years. Yeah,
so it's I think we just need somebody that just cares. I mean, just hearing him say tribal communities. I don't even think that Donald Trump knows what a tribal community is.
Probably not.
Or we know the different needs that they might have.
Right.
And then just in the very first speech before he's president, he's already making sure to be inclusive and talk about all the struggles that we're all going through. So
sure, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Well, let's introduce you to the people here. This is Miss Jessica DeLoach.
Yeah.
Political analyst, communication strategist who regularly provides analysis and commentary for national and international media outlets. You've been on Fox News. I actually have only ever seen you on Fox News, OANN, Newsmax. I know you're kind of the go-to counterpoint that the Republicans like to bring on, or it seems to be from the outside looking in.
I guess so. It's very strange how that ended up being how this shook out for me. All of the national work that I've done has been on right-leaning programs. And, that definitely goes beyond Fox News. Fox News is not the farthest reaches of the right by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. And Fox has various programs that air throughout the day, and they're all a little different. They might peddle similar disinformation or misinformation, depending on what mood you're in. But there are some differences between the shows. So
yeah, I make a point to watch all the different networks, just to kind of have a balanced idea. And you don't want to get swayed too far because there's rhetoric coming everywhere. I get mad at MSNBC all the time because I'm like, you didn't have to say it that way.
Yeah. You
could have just said it the way that it is, and it would have been just as powerful.
Right.
So there's work that needs to be done across the board here, but
sure. Sure. The media landscape is the political media landscape can be a toxic place, and depending on who's in control of the White House or what's happening politically, each major party or each side behaves a certain way. You can almost kind of anticipate how news will be delivered and who will be delivering what. It's all a bit predictable, and I don't know what exists on the left that goes as far to the left as what we've seen on the right. That's just not something that has really emerged. I'm sure that there are podcasts or some YouTube programming, like something that's a bit more off the beaten path that doesn't have a big following. But there really isn't anything that parallels what I've seen on the far right in terms of political media. And it's it can be upsetting. There's when you go onto these shows, depending on who you're speaking with, you will be, or at least my experience has been that I'll be invited onto a show. I'm not always told what we're talking about until maybe 10 or 15 minutes before we start talking. And then, of course, as news breaks, that is always subject to change. I've also had the experience of the more prominent the show is like on the political media hierarchy, you'll be asked to provide like a snapshot of what your talking points would be before you go on air. And that seems a bit strange, right? Because why would you want to say what it is that you're talking about? But the people who book the shows are attempting to find out whether or not they have some sort of a balance struck between guests. And, I've just gotten to where I'll write a couple of lines, but by no means do I fence myself in.
I mean, I guess if you went way off the beaten path or something, they might not invite you back
Yeah,
anymore.
I feel like
maybe.
you probably contain yourself just enough to probably get away with it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't cry about it if that happened, because I honestly don't care.
It's really not. And kind of going back to what you were saying about the left and the right and kind of the extremism.
On that point, you probably would hear, and we often do hear people on the right say that we're extreme left, which I
am about as far left as you could go on every left test that I could take. And
I feel like I'm a pretty reasonable guy.
Okay.
But I think the biggest difference that exists is what we're seeing play out right now, and kind of that racial component that kind of when the Republican Party went for that big tent other side conservative party and they brought in the evangelicals to kind of shore up their base, they had to take in all of those other people that kind of come along with it. And those are the people that we are unfortunately seeing, quite a bit of this week. Yeah. On all kinds of videos that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, with the insurrection at the nation's capital, I will say just the analysis, as we have been moving away from that day and analyzing what has happened, and we've seen people who engaged in that coup, they're being identified now and pursued by the authorities or by law enforcement. We are starting to see just how varied that group is. Of course, it was predominantly white. Overwhelmingly white, and
overwhelmingly Christian.
And there was a lot of there was a
Christian
faith component
ideology
to it, yeah. And then also there, you had people who were, of course, proudly posting about it online. They wanted you to know that they'd made the trip to Washington. I know there was that one woman who said that she'd taken a private flight to DC to participate in this, and the real estate agent, I guess, in Texas or wherever she lives, she's had to close her business, which, look, there are consequences to these decisions. This wasn't a protest. This wasn't just a riot. This was absolute chaos. If these people could have gotten their hands on any of these elected officials, very bad things could have happened. And actually, prior to us logging on, I saw the news item about the guy who had the flag on a stick that was beating that one police officer with it that had been pulled down the stairs. Apparently that guy is from Arkansas. How about that? So that's two. Yeah, the guy with his feet up on Pelosi's desk, and then you got this violent guy who I guess was quoted saying that the only way to deal with what was in that building was murder or something. I'm botching that quote, but it was just about as direct as that. And it's just really unfortunate that people feel that their government is so far away from them that they have to engage in violent activities. I mean, they were brainwashed, make no mistake about it. They were brainwashed. They have been brainwashed and conditioned for years. And you see that every time you see these videos surface of someone driving in their car and ranting while they're going down the road, and they are angry. I mean, even still seeing this commentary about this pedophile ring and all of this other nonsense that isn't real, these people have clung to this. There was a nurse, a school nurse, who has been busted for her engagement there. And, it's a little unnerving that you're like, wait a second, this is a person who's around, who would be, pandemic aside, around children, but she thought there was a pedophile ring that the Bidens are wrapped up in. I mean, who are these people and how did we get here?
It's really the way in which they went about this was very smart, because they followed a very specific playbook in which you go to brainwash people. This is a real cult that followed the cult playbook to indoctrinate the people that are following Trump right now. That's what I truly believe. Mm-hmm. But when you take in some of these things, when, like I said, when they kind of built that tent out a little bit bigger and they went into evangelicism, when you took that evangelicism and you started making it about children and things that can really connect to people that don't really connect to the Trumps of the world, and the side that's making all the money, the tax cuts did not help 99.9% of the people that stormed the Capitol at the beckoning of this president, and they support him. They think that thing was good for them, and it was the worst thing in the world, and we're going to punish them with it, with health care,
and we're going to make sure that they get an education. Hopefully survive this pandemic. Yeah. Maybe put some masks on them.
Maybe.
A couple things.
They did more harm than good. They definitely did more harm than good. Not even looking at the violence and the destruction they caused. They actually created a huge problem for Donald Trump. If anything could have made his legacy worse, these people found a way.
And that's the part where it's like, this was almost needed to open the. I mean, if this had not happened.
Yeah, you mean that there would be more of less of an understanding of how serious this has become?
There would be no understanding of how serious it is. Not one single Republican would have had gone against Trump until well after he was out of their realm of influence. Like, if he could influence the money and their standing in the Republican Party before this, he had a firm grasp of them.
I mean, it is interesting seeing some Republicans come forward and say the reason why these people have chose to behave the way they did was because we, meaning the Republican Party, had been lying to them for years. Mm-hmm. And of course, it would be nice to see more than the handful that actually got up to say the same, but to see that acknowledgement is really meaningful. Of course, Senator Mitt Romney came forward and said as much, which I certainly appreciated. And I'm sure it didn't make him feel good when he was being accosted in an airport by these same people, being shouted at on a flight, like they're up in the air, and he's being chanted at from the back of the plane by some very loud, insubordinate people who don't seem to care that maybe other people on the plane don't need to hear this and don't want to hear it. But no, this is very real, but there's a larger problem on the horizon, because no matter what, we have a huge problem with media literacy in this country, people not knowing where to find what I would like to call clean news, unbiased, nonpartisan news and analysis. It is getting harder to find. Also, there's this other conversation going on now about social media companies and whether or not they should have removed Donald Trump, and should they have even had the the power to do so. And the scary part is that right now, whatever the terms of service were, that's what they are allowed to enforce. So that's that. But there's a larger conversation about what it means. Is it censorship? And also, have we now officially started moving in the direction of driving a certain ideology more underground, where it will continue to build out its framework, its network, its connectedness, and when will we see that rise to the surface again? We've got some big problems on the horizon.
Honestly, I think it's what's happened each of the last two Democratic presidential terms. The conservatives went underground. They realized that they weren't welcome to speak in public because they weren't the majority, and they stopped, and they really kind of hid, and we kind of lost track of them. And then Tea Party came, and then we kind of lost track of that. And then Trump came.
Well,
and they were just waiting for someone that could really unite that base, and it happened. But now they're more radicalized than ever, and there's way more options to have completely untraceable, secured, and
encrypted chats that no one can find out about unless you're embedded.
Right. I mean, these places that these people will go to, they're not going to be places you want to be anyway. So I signed up for Parler some months ago because I wanted to see what it looked like. It wasn't even about wanting to see the rhetoric that was on it, because I could guess, and it exceeded expectations. But to see what the interface was like, how sophisticated it was, to understand its terms of service. And also I wanted to see what their grievance policy would be. And so there's a little bit more of a philosophical approach to the way the app was governed, right? So if you got online, got on Parler and you said something that was offensive, maybe even borderline violent or full on violent, that comment would be flagged. And my understanding is that it would be placed before a panel to decide whether or not it was a violation of free speech, which, as you know, can be very subjective. And unless you have some free speech scholars on this app making those decisions, which I promise you that wouldn't have been the case, who's really watching over this, then it becomes more of a conversation of what a person is allowed to say. It's not about free speech. It is about the consequences of the way we decide to use our speech that really is the conversation we should be having. And it's that classic shouting fire in a movie theater and what happens to you. Yes, you can do that. No one's going to stop you from doing it, but there will be consequences. And it's the consequences that we're talking about, not free speech. So we have, like you mentioned, the Tea Party. The rise of the Tea Party was a, Koch and others funded endeavor where it was like, let's just throw a bunch of money at a mob that we believe we can organize, that can then take a message that we want, that's ultimately going to benefit us, so that we can stop healthcare reform in its tracks, so that we can kind of put a stranglehold on the Democratic or the progressive movement. And then that entity that was so well funded for so long grew legs, was solidified. It was basically like a port for other people who were super angry and maybe not even that political. They were just really pissed off, a place for them to show up. And then they outgrew that home and they find other places. I mean, there is a propaganda network that exists that is fueled by large donors in some ways, but more than anything, it is fueled by anger. It's people who are getting, news that is biased, or is just not based in reality or fact, and they're angry, and they've taken every bit of anger they feel toward their own lives, though they may not understand it, and they put it somewhere. And I'm not in the business of being an apologist for any of these people, but I do think it is important to try to understand why these people might be angry. So is it because they haven't seen a real change in their wages over decades? Is it because there's been no real growth and opportunity? Are these the people who've been left behind as we've made technological advances in society and different industries have changed? Who are these people and why? And then if it's not any of that, how much of it is rooted in some sort of ism, racism or whatever bias? We don't know yet.
Well, we're both from Arkansas.
Yeah.
So we have a more intimate understanding of
what these people are that we're talking about, our fellow Americans, our fellow Arkansans, our fellow Southerners. But I grew up in Jessieville, Arkansas, north side of Lake Ouachita, right side of Buckville.
And between Buckville and Possum Kingdom, there's a little place there. So,
and I'm an El Dorado native, so
okay,
there you go.
So,
South,
boomtown,
the southernmost part of the state.
Yeah. So these people we know, and as I am friends with a lot of them from back home, I don't unfriend anybody, so I have a lot of people on my Facebook and Instagram walls that if they haven't stopped following me, which a lot of them have, but I get to see stuff. I get to see what they're talking about, and I know what they're really dealing with in really, really small town Arkansas.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, what I've seen, what I've witnessed is it started with, and I keep coming back to this because it's what I see. It starts with Christianity, and by using Christianity as that base, you can make abortion the issue that is, it's a no-go. So when abortion is a no-go, and only one party supports overturning Roe v. Wade, you've got them. And now you control the message. So when you're controlling the message, you have people like Tucker Carlson who can go on and lie, get sued, and then go to court and the judge say, well, it's like no one should reasonably expect to believe him. He's on a primetime show on the most popular network telling people news that they are believing. And they didn't get that article that said he was a big fat liar.
Yeah, it's
No
kind
one
of
ever
like
said
the
that.
Alex Jones, Sandy Hook hoax.
All of these people are being, so you grabbed them early.
And you got them with an issue that you knew you could get them with. They don't care about abortion. By and large, outside of that evangelical base that really, really does care about that, to me, I just feel like it was a catch-all early on in the Republican movement. That is what allowed that one thing there is what allowed them to direct people to Christian safe, non-satanic cabal worshiping
sites and news sources.
Well,
and then
I'm fascinated by the role that religion plays in politics and where these things intersect, because there are a lot of people who practice Christianity who don't have a problem with abortion.
For fair, I'm talking about the fact that because of evangelical Christianity, and there are some people that are very, very firm in their belief that abortion is wrong.
Oh no, yeah, there's no doubt.
And there are Christians that are democratic and are pro-choice and all that stuff too.
Yeah. It's not just like a one stop. No. It's interesting because there is a very particular type of voter that is very much not in favor of reproductive rights. They are very entrenched in their faith. They have strong leanings toward populism, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. There's more of this homespun wisdom that surrounds this particular demographic, and everything's very close to the family. And this, lack of trust in the government, of course, wanting to see government be very small, but also there's plenty of data that reveals that among this same group of people, there's also not so great of an understanding of the role that government plays in their lives. And, look, if everybody knew where every tax dollar went, everyone would have a grievance. They just would. Or they would have something to say like, oh, I didn't know my money funded that. In rural America, where you're most likely to find this particular profile that I've built out, this is also the same part of the country that is going to become more and more dependent on telemedicine. And, in the absence of the hospitals or doctors, telemedicine will become more of an essential service for these areas. But you're already seeing people or Republicans pursuing legislation that would prevent reproductive health care being delivered through telemedicine. But it's being cloaked.
Just happened, right? This week. One of the many things that happened this week.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and it's being cloaked, in other ways. Like there are more clever ways, like, well, you shouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z because, and it's actually like, well, no, your bottom line is that you want to prevent from the following things. So like, it's really kind of it's complicated, but for people who are excited that the Democratic Party now has control of the full government. It does not have control of the Supreme Court. I mean, of course, the Supreme Court is not a partisan institution, but we know the political leanings of the majority of those justices, and that doesn't mean that they can't surprise you. A lot of what we're going to see now that various legislative sessions have started in the majority of the states throughout the country will be legislation about abortion, and it's not necessarily about making the changes within the state. It is a network of states that want to say the want is here to then refer a question to the Supreme Court. And all it takes is wording the question just right to get your way.
No, they've been stress testing abortion in the South for the last 10 years, trying to figure out the right case so that they could take to this Supreme Court if they had Trump to do what their playbook worked perfectly for the long term for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Trump's legacy, as much as of a goon as he is, his legacy really is what he managed to do to the judiciary on a multitude of levels in this country. That's his real legacy.
McConnell definitely has a hand in that. When you hold up hundreds of judges for a year, so your boy gets there, you got to give him. That was some bootstraps that he loaned him.
Yeah, he did. No, he played an integral role in that as well. He could not have done it without McConnell. That's for sure.
But I don't think he would ever admit that.
No, I don't think he wants to be associated with Trump at all. But unfortunately, you can't do everything he just did and not be. So. Congrats, Mitch McConnell. You earned your legacy.
You did it.
At our expense. Yay.
So before we get too far into other things that have happened this week, I want to know, I know you were with Pete Buttigieg's campaign.
So I went to work on Pete's campaign. When I left Arkansas, or prior to leaving Arkansas, I was working at the Democratic Party of Arkansas as the senior advisor and the director of communications. And while I was doing that, or even really before I took that post, I had already started engaging in political commentary, on-air commentary, and written commentary, and even some radio work. So I started off doing analysis of politics in Arkansas, but then also, doing a little bit of a lot more national analysis and then international analysis. And then I ended up, while I was in Arkansas, expanding beyond what I had been doing in the state, and then doing more of the national network appearances, and then same for international work. I moved to Washington, D.C. in early 2018, to take on the role of a political director for an organization called the New Deal. And the New Deal is a network of state and local level elected officials across the country. So you're basically, what you're looking at here is kind of what a bench for the future would look like. And my job was to find the best and the brightest people all across the country to invite into this cohort so that they could come together and work on big ideas together, because there aren't really any organizations that do that. So I left that role to go on to Pete's campaign, and I served as the chief of staff to his husband. So Pete and Chasten and I all met long ago, and I worked on his DNC race. I always knew, I'd spoken with Chasten, I always knew I would leave my job to go on to help with the presidential campaign, because it was basically just like, let me know when you're ready, and then I'll be there. And that's how that happened. And, while Pete did not secure the nomination, he's now your transportation secretary, and I'm sure he'll be doing a lot of good for the country. I know he's got some really big ideas, some creative ideas, but he's also, I'll tell you, the one thing he really gets right is he knows how to surround himself with smart people. And it's not just the secretary of any of these institutions that runs the show.
It's like the chief of staff of his husband. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about all that, but no, it's a team, and it's he is there to execute on the wishes of the president, the wishes and the wants, and to see what is it that needs to be addressed, and then also looking at what those aspirational goals are and seeing how far down the field he can run with that football.
Yeah, I was excited to see him get transportation. Just I think that's a good role for him. I know that that's something that's close to Biden's heart, which lets me know that must have a my relationship. So that made it feel
nice for me, because I like nice things now, because of COVID has crushed my soul, and only like puppies and ice cream and nice things.
Sure, it's just like what's nice, what feels good. It's the Biden administration has done a wonderful job of establishing a strong, smart team. It's a robust team. It's nimble. We haven't even gotten to see how dynamic this team is going to be yet, and they have a lot of work.
It looks really incredible. Mm-hmm. Like just the diversity, the different perspectives. Which I'm going to kind of pivot over
the importance of perspectives in watching the debate the other night. It's just, you get so used to just all the whitewashed people, and then Cori Bush gets up there, and it's just, I know Cori Bush, like that kind of person. I've met her before, and she represents for St. Louis. She is a really, really big fan of Cori Bush, the 2 times I've heard her speak so far. But we just need real people that really care and really understand that if they have a shortcoming, to surround themselves by people that don't.
Yeah. That's part of being a leader. You have to know to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, and people who have other characteristics that maybe you lack, but also just people who are ready to roll their sleeves up and do this hard work. None of this work is easy. It's easy to make it look glamorous, but it's not. It can be really tiresome, and it's not like this administration hasn't been left with a big pit to clean up, right?
Is this the most difficult job a president has ever had?
Well, it's certainly a mess to inherit, but I think that there have been so many presidents who have had to clean up a lot of messes, and this one just happens to be our most recent worst mess. And so I guess Spanish flu in conjunction with World War I. Wars, yeah. And then also just, America as it was having to reconcile. I mean, this nation really hasn't ever come to terms with the fact that it engaged in slavery. I mean, it just hasn't. We just saw last week how we don't live in a post-racial society, and it is We have a lot of challenges in this country, and also I'm always fascinated when really tragic things happen in this country. You see this outpouring of love from across the world, and people who still hold this nation in very high regard despite its flaws and its previous mistakes. There are people who look at this country and do see hope. That doesn't mean that this country is perfect. We're far from a perfect people, far from a perfect government, but we are a pretty astonishing democracy. If you consider these guiding documents that seem to be working pretty well for us. I mean, I'm always open to reforms, but
yeah, I mean, definitely changes are great, but we really got tested here, but the rails held up, and it held up to the boat. I mean,
there's nothing that could beat it more than just serial disinformation.
Well, that's where we are now. That's where we are.
And it failed. So,
yeah. And, there's a lot of fighting back against what you can't see. So, radicalization can happen in a number of ways. And going back to the social media conversation we were having a little earlier, you've heard all this talk about young people being radicalized by videos they see on YouTube. We're just talking YouTube, right? Which is pretty easy to access and easy to navigate. And there's a lot of, there's been a huge effort to remove certain types of content from the online world. But I noticed I received an email yesterday from Powell's bookstore in Portland. And I'm on their mailing list because I signed up for this really cool program that they have where they will mail you a book that's signed by an author. I guess they do it a few times a year. It's called Indispensable, so it's kind of neat. But anyway, I received this email, and it was there had been some pushback from supporters of this bookstore because the store was carrying a book by a more radical conservative, more of a provocateur, and there's a particular publisher that sends them books that they trust. The publisher sent this book. The store decided to sell it. Then there was outrage over the selling of that book. And then the store issued a statement saying, we're going to continue selling this book online. It is not that we believe in the ideas espoused in this book, but we do believe in people having access to information so that they can understand how another side of the country thinks, how they talk, how they communicate, what's on their minds. And honestly, like, if we're looking at offensiveness on a spectrum, I'm not as worried about this particular book, but I understand the outrage, but I also understand and respect the response, because you do make a choice. You don't have to buy the book, you don't have to read the book, and you certainly wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of something that you valued being canceled, I guess. But I'm also not interested in people who have fascist views being able to make money off the fascist views, right? So it's really, it's like there's a complicated position to be in if you are being intellectually honest about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a very troubled relationship with all of this stuff too. I kind of struggle with it because I am constantly trying to solve all the world's problems, as every good leftist is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about, how can there has to be, at some point, there has to be some sort of accountability. Accountability is what everyone's talking about right now. And I think that needs to ring true with the media as well.
Sure.
There is no accountability in media because you can get on there and say whatever you want. And because of that, the average person, when they turn their TV on and they put it on a channel and they don't know anything else, and this channel says news, and then they're telling them things. Now they're taking in what they believe to be at least mostly true. And when you can just say whatever you want and there's no repercussions and you continue moving on, you could lose some sponsors, but there's other sponsors, as we're seeing, as the whole, Amazon, AWS, all of these other companies, they've shut them out on all these things, but they're just migrating over. There's Rabble or Rubble or whatever. That's the right YouTube. There's a right Twitter. There's a right everything. There's a right server that will host these things. That's what Gab is on.
Yeah.
Like these things all exist. And until you can figure out a way to make it balanced, so where there's not hate speech, you can't incite violence, you can't talk about murdering people, but you can have bad views.
But I don't think you're ever
bad views that are, as long as they're not just blatant lies
or calls to crime
or blatantly hateful or a criminal.
Yeah.
So,
well,
how do you get there?
It's all siloed. Like this is the danger when everybody retreats to their corners, and when there is a structure for them to retreat into. It just so happens to be that people who develop platforms like Facebook and Twitter do lean socially a bit more to the left. I don't think there's any question about that. But there could come a time where, as technology continues to change, you might have developers who have more conservative views. And then what, right? The other thing is, I think about this a lot now, where if you push people underground, let's just say there's a country that doesn't like the United States and wants to undermine it. Well, what would be a really smart thing to do? It would be to provide shelter for more radicalized people that disagree with the government as it is. That's dangerous. And, the United States has long boasted a freedom, freedom to engage on the internet the way you so choose, where you're not limited from seeing things the way people who live in China are. The way we were able to communicate, there's a freedom there, but there are lines that both the left and the right, and in my opinion, more frequently as of late on the right, continue to be crossed, that once you cross them, you don't go back. And a lot of what we've seen, when you mentioned a stress test of our country earlier, this stress test, it's basically how many of these unspoken rules that we abide by have we completely violated, and we can no longer, we can't go back to where we were now that they've been violated. That's really dangerous. It just shows you how fragile all of this is. And when there is no respect for these institutions, this glue that's held us together, what does that mean for our future? Because I'm going to be really sad if the rest of my life is spent in this hyper-partisan, hyper-polarized way. This just isn't what I thought adulthood would be like.
No, it's really not.
Yeah.
It's we have got a raw deal on this. Us late 30s people, early 40s
Elder
people.
millennials is what you mean to call it. We're calling it the raw deal. Yeah.
It's a raw deal. That's it's been a lot.
But I don't know. The way that people have so like you were saying, that the quickest way to destabilize a country would be to have some sort of foreign, potentially or otherwise. We don't know who Q is. This person that this whole other side's fault, and they're all these people are Q people.
I can tell because I'm in all of the things. I read all their stuff. I watched all the videos that everyone's uploaded on Parler because I've rabbit holed the last 2 days.
Yeah, it's so sad that it's also, once you start to read more about Q, how dumb it is.
It's so dumb.
It is so dumb. And I mean, this isn't even to diminish what it is. It truly is just dumb.
No, there's a girl that I follow. She's the only Q person, but I follow her because she posts a shit ton of stuff. So it's good for me to just every now and then I watch my stories. I'm like, oh, that's my Q update for the day.
Yeah.
And she did something, and it was
it was a post, a screenshot post or whatever, but it was from 2018. But it was all of it could just be made up. None of it. It's all just screenshots. So anybody could do that.
Oh my God.
But then it's he drops out of order, so you never know, or some bullshit. And I'm like, everything has just the worst excuse to be like,
yeah.
Well, it's because you can't wear brown hair, man.
I mean,
you know this. Q said this 3 years ago. No brown hair on a Tuesday at 6:02. They'll circle times and stuff and point to things.
I just don't. I don't understand the appeal of wanting of living that way. Why do you want to be outraged all the time?
We're seeing the end of it.
But it's more than that. They're looking for explanations, and these explanations are absurd. I mean, they're nuts. I don't know how to explain why.
A satanic pedophilia cabal of cannibals that has infiltrated every single corner of every part of the rest of the world except for these 74 million American patriots.
The pizza restaurant that the guy walked into with the gun.
Yeah,
so
the gun.
They've got great pizza. It's a wonderful place, Comet Pizza here in DC. It's great pizza, super cozy. It's it's squished in with a bunch of other different shops. And so you go there and you kind of, it's a larger room once you're inside, but there's still a coziness about it. And most people are, sitting up front. And had that guy decided that day to start shooting, I don't know how anybody would have made it out alive, with the exception of the people who just got lucky enough to run first and run in the right direction. It would have been a massacre. And he was told
he would have been doing it because he was saving children from
because
being
he thought
killed.
that there was a pedophile. Yeah, and like there was some secret room. And I think the bathroom is kind of like a secret door. I can't quite remember, but it's so odd to me that that's what they seized upon. How? Who did it? I don't even remember how that got started. I just know that was the narrative.
The Podesta emails.
Oh.
That's where it started.
Oh, yeah. See, this is...
it's all crazy.
I have to make room in my brain for this nonsense. I have to remember this. Yeah.
So, and the thing was there was a pedophile ring running out of the basement, and there's no basement at the Comet Pizza.
Well, even if there was, I mean, just like...
But there was no... But the fact that there's no basement in this place that you ran up in with a gun, at least look at the permit, the blueprints of the building or something first.
It's
and
just...
plan it out. If there really was a pedophilic ring running in the basement, like...
Yeah, these people
just overrun with emotion and reacting to these things.
Well, they're low information voters, with the exception of, or no, they're not low information when it comes to, the person they favor the most. They have a substantial amount of information as it pertains to what they want to believe, but it doesn't mean the information is correct either. It's just scary times.
It's what has made this divide so, and that's the smart thing, and that's why it's so cult playbook like, is when you get people into these, just when it becomes crazy and you can't respond to with words that normal humans would talk about things,
right? And
you're like, oh, but the cannibal cabals, and then the Pope is we can't have discourse here. We can't actually, there's no ground for us to stand on to communicate when this is our starting point.
And that was the point.
Oh, and what I was saying before is, like, we don't know who Q is, and it could be anybody. It could be a foreign government running a whole thing just to destabilize our...
No,
they could have done the same thing.
Q is Pizza Rat.
With ISIS.
Right. Q is Pizza Rat. Q is, it's just, I can't believe that this is where we
are. Our life right now.
Yeah. It's so wild. But
well,
yeah, let's see if we can turn this conversation in a positive direction.
All right, let's look through my notes here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Parler gets taken down. Trump incites.
Yeah, no, keep digging. Keep digging.
Trump gets impeached. Relatively positive.
So prior to us getting onto chat tonight, I was just kind of scrolling the news, and of course, there's been more, conversations intercepted by the FBI of people talking about potential violence leading up to the inauguration, and anything from after the 16th or 17th, whatever these people have identified. And I'm just thinking about my friends who have decided to leave town because they just don't want to be here in case anything happens. And then there's a part of me that is just like, well, I'm not leaving. And also, if this happens again, then how does anybody have any faith that law enforcement has it together enough to deal with this? I mean, what happened last week should have never been allowed to happen. And it kind of it pulled back the curtain on how this impenetrable fortress, right, is the opposite of that. It was no fortress.
All you need is a little less melanin and an ID badge.
Right. We survived.
I'm literally one of you guys. Just let me on in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was through luck that it wasn't worse than it was. And there was something about the news about the pipe bombs that were when that was released. That was the thing that upset me the most, because my office is literally in between both the RNC and the DNC. Like if I were to walk out of my office and walk down the street and like about 40 feet and look to the left, I would be looking at it. I think about how it's deeply disturbing, because you should be able to live your life and not be worried about pipe bombs being planted nearby. And then, while all the chaos was going on at the Capitol, where else were these people? Like where else were they potentially planting things, and what was the rest of their plan? These people who had their guns and their what was it, the homemade napalm? That guy? What? I have a feeling that this isn't over. These people they're violent, they're activated, and they're here to play.
They've gone underground. The technology exists for them to do so, and they've increased their militia legions by hundreds and thousands, like hundreds and thousands of times more than what they were before. Because militia groups 10, 15 years ago are like of 5 redneck dudes out in the hills shooting some stuff and like doing some trainings to get going whenever the government, whatever.
Yeah. I've met these guys. I know these guys.
Well, yeah, they're all hyped up and they want to play cowboy.
But it's all, when there's 5 of them and they're just out, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. But when there's 5,000 of them.
That's a problem. Right. When they find each other.
Yeah, and the temperature gets raised, and then, we all have lines, but we all have the ability to let those lines go when we see somebody else do it.
Correct.
It kind of gives ourselves permission. We're like, well, if they do it, and that's how these mob mentalities work.
Well,
it's like, okay, well, he punched the guy in the head, so I can punch him in the knee, and then, they broke that window, so we can break this door.
No, they watch each other, and, some people show up a little bit more hyped up than others. There were also, the woman who was shot, whose name I'm blanking on. I don't mean to forget her name.
Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah. So she,
Ashley Babbitt.
was a person who at one point in her life served this country. And it was almost like, I have to ask myself, why did she think that the rules didn't apply to her when those officers said, do not come any further, do not do this? Why did she think that they weren't?
Did you see the video before that?
Yeah.
Where the 4 guys negotiating with 4 cops saying, hey, we're one of you, let us on through.
And there was not going to be any negotiating there. And then she attempts to climb through a window and she gets shot.
But why would those cops had to know that there's, I guess that's Secret Service on the other side, but like, if you climb through a window and a Secret Service guy's pointing a gun at you, he's going to shoot you.
Well,
You're climbing
what do they
into
think was going to happen?
There's people in there they're protecting.
Yeah, some of the most important people, like most important political figures, leaders of this country, in this institution, and you were told, stop what you're doing, do not come any further, and you decide to do so. You have been told so many times. You have been, and it's there's been this ongoing conversation about police brutality and police violence in this country. That is not what this was. These were people who were charged with protecting elected officials who were under siege by a mob of people who've been brainwashed. And you saw so many of their faces, and it was like they didn't know what to do once they got further in the facility. I'm going to steal a podium. I'm going to take a selfie in Pelosi's in one of her offices. The dog caught the bus and didn't know what to do and was just. They looked foolish, but in the meantime, on the way there, they were destructive. People got hurt, people died, and they all need to be held responsible for it. Every single one of those people that participated in that need to be responsible.
If there's not over 1,000 arrests from this, then they messed up.
Yeah, well,
there is at least 1,000.
I'm not expecting it.
But there were at least at least 1,000 people at minimum that you can tell from that video are inside, even if they're not inside the Capitol, they're inside they broke down gates and are occupying the inauguration stage and the Capitol steps. Those are places that they had tear gas shot at them to clear out.
Well, we're going to know more about what all happened. I'm sure in the weeks to come, there will be more analysis and more reports, and I'm sure it'll be even more horrifying than the last story we've read. But this is where we are, and you have all these people who are calling for unity. All these Republicans that are like this, impeaching Donald Trump and removing him from office is not a move toward unity. And it's like, actually, a move toward unity would have been, after all this happened, if the 144 or 147 of you who still went and voted to overturn these election results after that happened, don't talk to me or anyone else about unity, because that was a cowardly move. And it just speaks to how not seriously they had taken what happened that day.
I don't know how you can expel them from Congress still function.
I know.
It's probably going to happen, but
maybe. I don't know. I don't have much faith in that being leveled out. I don't have much faith that beyond the ballot box, these people will not be held accountable. It is going to take it's going to take finding a good candidate to run against them and organizing like hell to take those seats. And 2022 is going to be a very difficult campaign cycle because the Republican Party is licking its wounds. It is a serious, for lack of a better way of putting it, branding issue. But they know how close they are to taking back the House, and they're going to fight like hell to get it. It's, the best day of Biden's presidency is going to be the first day of his presidency, and everything after that is just going to be a full-on assault on his agenda. It already is, really.
Starting with an impeachment on day one. And of course, all of the efforts into the census and the control of state houses and legislators is all about gerrymandering so that they can ensure that they can have their seats and their places and drawn it exactly the way they want. And that has to stop too. That is the thing that there needs to be an independent commission that oversees all national election boards.
And and the secretaries of state and everyone that draws out these things. I mean, there has to be some equality and fairness brought back to the system for people to trust it.
Well,
and that's
some states have independent citizens.
Virginia just did one, I believe.
Right. Like some states have it, not nearly enough, not nearly enough of them have them. I would like for all of them to have it, right? But then even the question becomes, well, who makes it onto the commission, blah, blah, blah.
Just as long as it's bipartisan,
because they're as divided as they are, you can pretty rest assured that these guys are going to do this, and they're going to have to agree if you put an even number. So.
Well, and you can use our home state as an example. The people drawing the maps right now, for the next 10 years, the people who get to have a seat at the table are all Republicans, and the governor, the secretary of state, the attorney general, all of them, and it's really complicated because this is 10 years. 10 whole years. I mean, I fully expect Arkansas to remain a very conservative state for the foreseeable future. The upcoming gubernatorial elections there are going to be brutal.
Unfortunately. I like I said, the 2010 census gerrymandering, I think, changed everything about the direction of Arkansas politics and the way in which it's composed. And when you can create a majority by just changing the way you draw the lines, then you're never going to lose that majority.
Well, and change seems to come slow in some states, and I would say that's true for Arkansas. And you do have a very robust group of people on the left and people even in the middle who just want to make things better, and they're working very hard every day to try to get there. But they're out-financed. They don't have the same amount of resources. It's complicated.
And that's what's frustrating about being in Arkansas. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but I lived in Little Rock and I went to school in Fayetteville after I left Jessieville. I found myself, for the most part, having a hard time finding people that disagree with me. Most people that I encountered in almost all walks of life in Little Rock and Fayetteville, the two most populous areas and cities in the state, are pretty overwhelmingly like centrist at minimum, and if not like slightly progressive centrist or left leaning. I mean, there's definitely the thing, but most of the conservative party not the ruling conservative party, but the party that votes all of the rest of the state are those white flight communities in Sling County and Grant and
sure. Well, and with these blue pockets that you have across the state, it will be easy to chisel into them, to remove some of those blue seats, or to make the seats that are traditionally held by Democrats, to make them a little bit more winnable for Republicans. And, even within Pulaski County, which is where Little Rock, Arkansas exists, I believe we will very soon see a bit more of an insert of, we'll see more conservative individuals seeking more local positions. And, Pulaski County, the mayor is not Little Rock, Arkansas, the mayor is not a partisan position, but the people who have traditionally served as mayor have a tendency to lean more to the left. The city, people who are city officials or local officials have a tendency to lean more toward the left until you start going outside of the city. And it'll be very interesting to see that change, because the other thing that I don't think gets enough time discussed would be these young Republicans who do have more moderate views on social issues, but they're still very conservative, and they're kind of going to be what would be the breath of fresh air within the conservative movement. And that's a real thing. And and alongside that, there are young conservatives who are very, very, puritanical about their social beliefs too. So, it's everything changes, yet somehow manages to stay the same. Yeah.
And I guess,
we probably can give it some time. We'll see how Biden does before, for myself to make too many sweeping statements, because there is so much change that could happen.
Sure.
Biden could,
as he outlined tonight, vaccinate 100 million people in 100 days. He could pass, get us the additional $1,400 to make it 2,000. Infrastructure building, hiring 100,000 healthcare workers to assist doctors and nurses in giving vaccines. These are all things that will create jobs, money. When you start rewarding people for their insolence with things that help them live life better and happier, I think we got to give it a shot, and we got a chance. We have a really small window right now. We got 2 years, and we have the precedent of misusing budget reconciliation, so we can use that to make some real changes. And the precedent's been set, and we needed someone. Like, I'm really, really happy that Bernie's in that position, because Bernie is one of the only ones that's like, I will play all of y'all's games the same way y'all play them, but I'm going to do it for our side. And a lot of Democrats have a hard time playing the games that Republicans play to get their stuff done, to get their 3 judges and all their stuff.
It'll be very interesting to see this configuration of what is the Biden administration, how it all works together. Will we see any squeaky wheels? Will those wheels be justified? I'm excited about all of it, because it's a fresh start. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not going into this with the expectation that it will be. There's a huge amount of work.
I already have a bone to pick with it.
Okay. See, there you go. That's democracy. There's a lot to be done. And also that first 100 days is critical, because a lot of these members of Congress, they know how close they came to not being reelected, and they know they're going to have to protect their seats. They know they're going to be up against some very significant messaging machines. I mean, what we just saw in Georgia with these Democratic victories, we need that same level of effort all across the country.
Well, that's the thing that's frustrating, I think, to most people on the left is you feel that I think we almost know that the majority of people in this country do identify more center left or left for most issues. It just is.
Well, as evidenced by the popular vote, right? Like that's
every year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When's the last time a Republican actually was the most popular person in the country?
It's been a while. It's been a while. I don't know. I'm hopeful. And if anything, before we connected to have this conversation this evening, just listening to President-elect Biden speak was really refreshing. It was just nice to hear that, and to also feel that weight lift off your shoulders of, oh yeah, it's felt really bad not having any real leadership these last 4 years. So he won't be perfect, because no president is perfect, but it's going to be night and day.
Yeah, and I think he will listen, but be firm with I think he has a strong set of morals and standards that he wants to abide by. But he also understands that other people have other experiences that he might not get, and I think he's malleable to those.
Yeah, well, he's patient.
Types of interactions and conversations.
Patient person.
But
so my bone to pick on this, though, and this is something that's very important to me as the Unemployed Bartender podcast that exists here.
Yeah.
Which was born out of the elimination of hospitality industry completely, hundreds of thousands of jobs in New York City, where I'm at now, and it's a lot. There's no industry hit harder than the hospitality industry, period. Not just because of all the jobs that are lost, but it's the only consumer subsidized industry out there. So half of this income is not even being accounted for most of the people that are on unemployment. There's no way to replicate the ability to earn money from bartending or serving or anything like the $400,000 or $500,000 in a night, and you're getting $200, $182 for unemployment.
Yeah,
it's a joke and it's an insult personally.
Sure.
But the big deal for me is you passed a $600 unemployment boost to start this pandemic. I was one of the people that had to take advantage of that. Changed the way I set my life up and built it around this budget because the government told me that I can't work anymore. But we'll give you X number of dollars, which we would assume until one might be able to go back to work. But no, it ended July 31st. And then they passed the 300. So now we're already, you just cut it in half, like 50%. People having to change their budget again. You only got that for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
5 weeks in some places. And then now nothing. Now you're down to whatever it was for months and months and months and months. Bills didn't change. Everything, your whole life might have been built on that initial thing that your government, like I did. I moved at the time when I got the unemployment. I found a place that I actually wanted to live because I lived in a shithole because I was in New York and it was expensive as hell.
Yeah.
But everyone left, and I had a job. You know, I'm on unemployment. I know how much I'm making. I know that I can move. So now I'm in a new place, and then you take the money away. You don't have that same protections now because I moved in the middle of the pandemic, and now I'm unprotected from rent protection. I can't get rent remedy.
Yeah.
And there has to be something to make up for that time where people lost $2,400 a month for 5 months.
Sure.
That we all agreed at the beginning of the pandemic was like a bare minimum amount for people to be able to survive on. And then you took that away and you come back around and you say, okay, $400, which is this is my bone to pick. I think that there needs to be something in this bill that addresses the neediest people that are in this country right now, which is the unemployed.
Yeah.
The unemployed with no health insurance, with 5 months missing out of their pay that has not been even discussed one single time by a politician. And that pisses me off every single day because I got into the stock market this summer. I did fine. I'm doing fine and nobody worry about me. Everything's good. But most people didn't have the opportunity to, or didn't do well. I mean, it's stock market.
Well, yeah,
everything's crazy.
Right.
I got lucky. I found the stock super low and then it kept going up. And it still is. So I'm really happy about it.
That's good. That's very good.
A lot of people, but that's...
Yeah, because
I've been trying to find a platform to say that for a while, and I'm glad that it got around to this because I needed to get that out there.
No, you do. I mean, look, there are a lot of people in this country that were either living paycheck to paycheck, or they were just one calamity away from financial collapse, and nobody saw a pandemic coming. Also, no one has any reason to believe that the government is prepared to deal with them
stop work.
Well, with the next thing, what's the next pandemic? What's the next big thing that's going to create this sort of upheaval? I mean, look, the Trump administration had several months to deal with this, and it just didn't. It basically has wasted a year, and it was ill-prepared. It's now a problem that's being inherited by a totally different administration. It doesn't matter what the political leaning of this administration is. It's now someone else's problem. But yet everybody else's problems remain because, there are a lot of people who've drained their savings, a lot of people who didn't qualify for these checks who still don't qualify. I mean, there are people who are...
I mean, the number of times I've maxed out my credit cards and paid them off this summer.
Yeah.
I mean that's, who doesn't have credit cards? A lot of people don't have credit cards.
And people don't want to live that way. They know it's a dangerous game. But when you're forced, you're forced into a corner, you're going to do everything you can for your own survival. And so there's a lot that has to change. I mean, look, there was this whole conversation about student loans. Oh, if you have student loans, you're going to be okay because everything's going to be put on hold. No, that wasn't true for all student loans. It was true for some student loans with a certain designation. There were also certain student loans of different designations where you had to call to ask for a deferment. But even in that deferral period, you're still suffering the consequences of deferment. If you didn't know to make the call, and if you assumed that your student loans were being taken care of, you probably woke up one day and had a notice in your inbox or something that things aren't looking good and your credit report has been affected because you haven't been paying your student loans that you didn't think you had to pay. There was a lot of miscommunication.
Same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when we first happened in April, I called my credit card companies and I was like, I want I'd got an email
Yeah.
from my credit card company saying like, hey, pandemic,
Yeah.
call us, tell us you want to defer it, and it'll all be good.
Well,
Like,
think about
that sounds great.
Think about all the people who did not know and still do not know
No, I'm not
about
done.
having. Oh, go ahead.
So I called them. I deferred. I paid one, and then I had two others that I had balances on, and I was like, okay, I'm going to defer these, and then I can figure it out later. We'll make this work. Whatever. Still hadn't. It was 3 months till I got my unemployment, so it was a long journey there in the beginning. So call, defer, everything's great. 2 months later, checking my credit, get an email credit report, 150-point drop in my credit report. I'm like, what the hell's going on? 2 missed payments from 2 credit cards that I deferred. And I called and they're like, no, that's a thing. That's something else. I'm like, y'all told me, you called me, you emailed me and said, hey, defer your credit card. We'll cover it for you. We'll, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's people at some point, I'm going to get the energy to call these 2 credit card companies and go through all the bullshit that I'm gonna have to go through to win this battle, to get these 2 stupid little payments in the middle of all of my good payments that has completely screwed my credit. And if I didn't have cash and didn't already have credit cards, then I would be fucked.
Yeah. I'm really sorry that happened to you. That sucks.
That's only one of the places that and everyone's gone through something this summer, because this is there's no missing it. But there are more people than me in way worse situations than I am, going through way more things worse than I am. And I had a shitty, terrible year.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to realize, is that everybody needs help and everybody needs something.
Well, not everyone was paying as close attention as you were too, right? Think about all those people. I mean, think about how many people don't know that they have to pay taxes on the money that's being given to them by the government. They don't know. I mean,
most. Almost every single.
I am sure.
Do you know how many people I've met in New York that know where Arkansas is on a map?
I've talked to some of them. It's always fun to see where they think Arkansas exists.
They're like, is that over?
Yeah.
Is that by Illinois?
No, it's like, just keep thinking, keep guessing. But
Midwest, Northwest.
But the idea here, the hope here, is that we're finally kind of breaking free of this darker period. Obviously, this is a period of repair. It's not, I'm not quick to be jubilant about anything. I take the victories where they come, even if they're small, and I'm hopeful. I will carry a lot of hope.
I'm very hopeful.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, and I think that's as I was watching Biden speak tonight, and I'm looking at this man with concerned eyes and a soft approach, and and a real human that makes mistakes and misses words up and keeps
corrects himself and moves on, we all do. Every single part. I've done it 4 times this show.
Yeah. Well, me too. I've made mistakes too.
But something about that really kind of solidified into me that this could be a complete, who knows. But he has the potential to be one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. If he can achieve some of these goals and ideals that he has, he could be the most important president that we have ever had, because we are in one of the most serious situations that our country has ever been in.
Your presidency should be measured by how you rise to the greatest challenges that lie before you, right? And no president wants to have turmoil like this that they have to face, but he knows he knew what he was running, what he was going to be handed when he started running, and there's always the unexpected stuff, right? And this pandemic was certainly part of it, but we all you can do is remain future focused. But the hope from all of this is that people are a lot more engaged with their government, and they study it a lot more and find a way to feel not so disconnected from it. If anything, what drives a lot of what I do and what I want to do with my life is want to find a way to make government more accessible for people who feel very separate from it, because you shouldn't feel that way. These people work for you.
No, I think we should definitely have a greater emphasis on introducing children to government. There should be, we need to bring back the afternoon specials about Mr. Bill.
I agree. I agree.
and then we also need to introduce social media ethics to our children, like at an early age.
Yeah, that's just part of.
And just
yeah,
that's what the future is, and that's how. I mean, the only way we're going to fix this is by educating ourselves in whatever manner that may be.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be book smarts or anything like that. Just emotional intelligence. There's a lot of things that we need to get, fixed.
Right. Well, also you're supposed to be, your best self when you're your best steward. You don't want other people leading you. You want to be able to make your own informed decisions. And so, if anything,
as soon as you feel like someone else is pushing you to do something, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to push back. No one likes to be.
Ask questions, right? Ask questions. So, this has been so. I mean, it's fun. I feel like we've kind of come full circle. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you were right, because I was about to do. So what I have at every show is what I like to call actually, you know what? So this is our first show of the new year. I did one with this really amazing photographer, Fred Cray.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him at all?
No.
He's a photographer that he's taken like 48, or he has left 48,000 original photos that he's taken and numbered all over the world. And I found one of his pictures in a bookstore in Kingston, New York, upstate, this summer. And I was like, what is this?
That's awesome.
And it was this photo right here.
Okay.
It's this really cool, just like he runs them through like the printer multiple times, and they're all like unique, one of a kind photos. Anyway, that was the last show of the year.
That's awesome.
Last year. And I haven't talked to anybody other than like family and just a lot of stress in like 4 weeks or so.
Right.
This is the first show of the new year, and I forgot the name of my happy hour. It's happy hour lightnings. Happy hour lightning round. That's what's happening now. That's how we're going to close this show out.
Cool.
This is the round in which I ask you a series of questions that will have you guaranteed to have people approaching on the street because of how controversial they are.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Go for it.
All right. Cheese dip or queso?
Cheese dip.
It's the only way. I have to educate these people because they don't even know what cheese dip or queso is.
Oh,
nobody
boy.
carries it here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's cheese dip.
Cheese dip all day. Pro or college sports?
College.
All right. And your team? Are you a Trojan or are you a Razorback?
Oh, I'm neither. Oh, you really did want to find a way to set me up. Alabama.
Never heard of them. All right, moving on. Liquor or beer? We play you guys in basketball Saturday.
Both.
Both at the.
Not at the same time. What kind of animal do you think I am?
A Purdue Boilermaker, maybe?
Oh, haha.
Best cocktail you've ever had?
Literally nothing comes to mind. That doesn't mean I haven't had delicious cocktails. It's just that nothing comes to mind. That really stands out. That's unfortunate.
I think it is. Let's see. For me, I don't have one. I really am a shot of JMO and a nice local IPA. Any local will do.
Okay.
Or wherever I'm at.
Okay.
What's your favorite president?
Oh my gosh.
Of these United States.
That is such a hard question for me.
I know.
I mean, I love FDR. I really love FDR, but it's really hard not to love George Washington. Just given, of course, all of these people are imperfect. They all have controversy, but in terms of things that they faced during their presidencies, it's really hard to have a favorite. But
to create a country it's
a lot. To navigate a war, separating from another country. It's a lot. So it's kind of hard to not love the Washington presidency.
All right. So we'll say FDR is your favorite modern president.
Yeah.
Modern-esque, modern adjacent.
Yeah.
What's your favorite interview or show that you've ever done? Like, what's your
that I've
go-to?
ever done?
Like you're just the best interview experience you've ever had on a.
Okay, believe it or not, I'm going to give this award to a Newsmax program. So there is a woman named Miranda Kahn who has a show on Newsmax. And this was in 2017. And I think it might have been November. So this is when the Al Franken scandal was breaking. And I was invited into the studio. I was mic'd up. I was going on to talk about something totally different. And then the Franken scandal had broken, or like more of the major news surrounding it. Mm-hmm. And we pivoted. And I ended up with, I mean, at least 20, if not 25 or 30 uninterrupted minutes to talk about the issue of power dynamics, within the political arena, this type of behavior, and just how gross and widespread it is. And there was something about that interview that I'll never forget, because it was very on the spot. It's complicated because that there was pain there for that woman, and then for this country, because Al Franken was a person, and to a lot of people still is a person that a lot of people love. But he did what he did, right? Like, you just can't make excuses for that. So that interview stands out. Yeah,
I could definitely see that. You got thrown on the spot and rose to the occasion.
Yeah, well, you
got to like rock out and be yourself and like say the things you want to say.
Yeah, you have to be honest.
That would be fun. All right. Little Rock food or DC food?
Little Rock food.
Because it's the best foodie city in the country.
It's one of them, but there's delicious food in Arkansas. So especially
it's the best place in the world. I miss it so much. And then I don't know if you have the same problem in DC, but it's just different, man.
Well,
everything's a little different.
And that's not to say that there's not amazing food here. It's just that the stuff that I find comforting, I don't find that here. And the food in my hometown is always going to be the best. So the award goes to Arkansas. Yeah.
So the Shack, what do we call it? The Jessieville Country Club. It's this old shack across the street from our school. That's it's the best. It's still going to be the best, even though there's no way that's the best burger I've ever had, but it's still the burger I crave.
Right. It's what you know. It's what you like.
It's what I want. All right. Well, that was it. We did a podcast.
Okay.
The first one of 2021.
Well, thanks.
Probably the first one anyone's done in 2021. Everyone's been pretty busy this year.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I really appreciate you having me on. This was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
Do I?
It's great to see you.
You as well. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. I want to make sure people have the best way to track you down if they want to follow you. Sure. Listen to this on Twitter and all that stuff. Why don't you take it away and let people know where they can find you?
Twitter is the best place. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @Jessica Zan. So it's my first name, my middle name, all squished together. It's JESSICAXAN. I'm always on Twitter. It's unfortunate. You can also find me on Instagram, but I'm just not as lively in other places. And I very rarely use Facebook, so don't even bother. It's not worth it.
It's, I could tell by... You have a lot of followers and you have a lot of interactions. I'm just kind of new to the Twitter thing. It never really made sense for me because I didn't really care what other people were like. Yeah. I don't need to know you're I'm walking down the street, and that's what people were doing a long time ago. And then I kind of got over it.
Right.
And then never learned the platform. So then that pushed me back quite a bit. But this last year I've taken the time and I'm like really getting into Twitter, like all kinds of cool stuff on there. But
yeah, it's what you make it.
I only have like 50 followers. So it's I'm still working on growing that old Twitter following. But
well, I'm following you now, so you're gonna get there. You're gonna get there, and you're going to get tired of seeing me in your Twitter feed. So stand by.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming on. We have a great guest bartender coming on next.
You guys,
thank you so much for coming on, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to join you again sometime soon.
Yeah, DC is not too far away, and when it's not a pandemic, I can guarantee I'll be down there sometime. So
awesome. Well, we'll have a drink when you come down.
Yes. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So much desire to again push this because at noon, I was like, yeah, whatever, noon. And then this morning I was like, do not ever let me schedule a thing at noon again because my mind ain't right. It's just... when you get the coffee and you get to the third cup and then your mind's kind of a little bit racing a little bit for 15, 20 minutes. It's a little harder to think and talk.
Oh, yeah. No, big time.
That's where I am right now. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. This is an honor. This is really cool.
Yeah, appreciate you being on. for everyone that doesn't know, because I haven't introduced him yet, this is Mr. Luke Graham. He's my guest bartender for the day. I really appreciate you coming on. A bunch of different things I want to talk about. We're going to kind of do a little short. I was telling my producer earlier, we're going to do a little short episode because our main guest, Jessica DeLoach, big-time political pundit for pretty much all the major networks. She was our main guest. We went over 2 hours, so I want to make sure that we don't go crazy long with this one here. But I want to have you back at some other point here real soon, and we're going to talk all about this book that we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we're going to hop right into that.
Yeah.
But you're from Massachusetts. You've been bartending for 11 years in Boston. You pride yourself on being a neighborhood bartender, which is what I am, and I appreciate other people that recognize the distinction. And you're currently working a couple days a week right now in Boston. Is that right?
Yeah, only 2 days a week. I'm working at a secret steakhouse. It's called Bogey's Place. It's kind of a Casablanca themed.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm just doing that like 2 days a week right now while this nightmare is still going on. So
now, when you say secret steakhouse, like, is it secret COVID steakhouse or a normal speakeasy type secret steakhouse? Because there's
kind of don't want to answer that question, but
yeah,
it's always a secret steakhouse. It's in the back of like one of our industry bars in Boston called JM Curly. So it's in the back. It's like 3 tables, very small, 2 seats at the bar, and it's just like a nice little atmosphere. Like you walk back into it, and you're in like a different world. So
yeah, no, that sounds exactly like my kind of place. So
yeah,
the next time I'm in Boston when things are normal,
please come in, hit me up, please.
Yeah.
So
what's been up? You're working a couple days. Have you been? Kind of tell me what's your COVID story?
Yeah, so basically, what is it? I was working at 2 different places, and then COVID happened. One of them closed, and then I never got a call back afterwards because they hired back like only a few people, and then it's basically just been sitting at home. Like the routine is basically sleep, wake up, wait until a bar is open, and then go out from there, or wait till like shops open up and then maybe try. But the biggest problem that I've been telling people about is it's really hard to like have a normal existence, obviously. But it's like, I don't want to travel anywhere in Boston because Boston is all squares. So it's like you go to like Davis Square where I live, or Central Square, but everything's closing. So it makes it really hard to actually leave. So the routine is wake up, wait until the bar opens, go there, that closes, then just go back home. It's been weird watching the city get like pretty much, I was talking to Regina, like the city's pretty much been gutted. So
yeah, we don't have there's not even bars really you can go to here right now. I haven't been to a bar, sat at a bar I guess it'll be coming up on a year because I don't really do much in the wintertime. So probably over a year since I've really sat at a bar. Luckily for me, this is my normal hibernation period, so it's actually starting to be kind of normal, almost back to normal January life for me. Yeah. But as soon as March gets around, I'm going to be real stir crazy because
well, my birthday's in March too. My birthday's St. Patrick's Day, which was the day after the lockdown.
Yeah.
So that was a little depressing, but we actually had a lot of fun. We went to there's a place down the street that was still open for the night and had a decent time. Like we were literally playing like canasta at the bar, which is like the old lady like card game. But yeah, like it's just, it's sad to see, but thankfully a lot of places in the area have like, they just take their high tops and put them against the bar, and then they've made like little snugs and whatnot. So like you get like some semblance of normalcy, but like you can't really go anywhere on your own.
No, and even if you were, like the last thing we really need to be doing is engaging with it. But the whole point of being out there is to see people and talk and have those conversations that we all crave.
Yeah,
that's the risky part. Like that's the part that we don't do. So the best case scenario is just to go there and sit there, and not talk to anybody. Which is
like that, and that's fine with me too. Because I really
love that.
I'm the guy, like I'll sit at the bar and just read a book.
Yeah, that's me 100%. But that's because I think we're neighborhood bar guys. We live in a bar. Our home bar is kind of like home. So like all the way through college. I was at the four in Arkansas. That's where I'm from, Little Rock. We have bars that are open until 5 a.m. But I would be there. I'd be out till 5 a.m. working on my biochem homework for the next day, or a quiz that I had, or that's where I wanted to be, surrounded by people and noise, and then I could focus because I had my bar there.
Yeah, that's like I call my bar down the street. I call it the living room because it's like no matter what, I can just go sit there, be comfortable, have a drink, and
that's the name of the first bar that I ever became a home place was called the living room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we also called it
that. I think that's one of the most important parts about any bar is like you can go in by yourself, you can meet up with your friends, it doesn't matter. It's just it's your place and it's comfortable, and that's why like neighborhood again. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a neighborhood guy and you have a home bar, it becomes the town square, the place that you're like, oh, well, I was thinking about, let me pop by and see who's there. Yeah, and be like, hey, whatever. It's the message board of real life.
Yeah, I mean, the saddest thing is we have one of the best bars, for me anyway. I think in the world is a place called Sligo, and it's maybe 100-foot long. Just a bar, no food, which is not really a thing in Boston anymore. Like you have to have food; it's part of our ordinance. And they closed sadly, but before they did, it was the place. You just walk in, get a beer. The bartender knows exactly what you want, and it's not like you don't go for like a craft cocktail. You just get like a High Life and a shot of something. Yeah. And it was great. You could sit there, and then someone would come in. You say hi. That was it. Or you would end up spending the whole night with them. Like you could go in at 3:00 in the afternoon and be there until midnight. And it's sad to see how so many places like that are disappearing now. Yeah,
I mean, and the places that you would think are hardest hit are these places that really, really, survive and strive off of their local clientele, the people that put that money into them and come there every single day. Neighborhood bar prices are usually lower. It's all about, we know that these 75 people are going to roll in here every single day. And I think they're struggling. Everyone's struggling. It's hard to say. Everything sucks. And
it blows. It just does. There's no other way to say it. It sucks.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about home bars versus a home bar. We talked about our home bar as a neighborhood, but a lot of us have had to transition over into just having a bar at home. Are you doing anything different, or have you come up with any new,
So when this all started, I was actually making a lot of videos and I put them on YouTube. I basically was making videos for people that are sitting at home and want a cocktail. So I was going over old Cubans, Manhattans, old fashions, the easiest way to make them at home, the cheapest way, because I know that people are always so directed towards getting a premium spirit that costs $40 for a bottle when you can get a bottle of Old Overholt and make the best Manhattan.
Yeah.
At home for cheap, and it's no problem. So I've been doing a lot of stuff like that with those videos. But at the home bar, I mean, I'm not gonna cook up a crazy recipe just because I'm not the sourdough bread type making person. So the video is basically focused on that and just kind of doing, easiest way to make it home, cheapest, fresh ingredients, because when you're making a cocktail for yourself, all you need is one lime, and then you just go from there, and you can, do anything like that. I mean, what have you been doing?
Honestly, it's, we started this show. That was kind of a big part of it. And because for me, the most important part of bartending was the conversations. That's why that's why I self-identify as a neighborhood bartender. Because that's my value. Yeah. That's my highest value at a bar, because I can talk.
That's my biggest thing. Always. Yeah. When I started out, I met this great bar manager, and she gave me a Dale DeGroff book. She mailed it to him. He signed it for my birthday and sent it back. And so I was really into the whole craft. And then once I finally homed that, it became about hospitality for me. There's nothing better than going to the bar, seeing that one person, or I hired a good team. So seeing those people all the time, and you can sit, relax, have a cocktail, know it's going to be good and whatnot. Like my favorite place in the world is Eastern Standard, which recently closed, sadly, because of like a dispute or whatever. But I would go in there. I had it was my treat night. I would get a Hearst, which is like a gin Manhattan, basically, and a steak frites, and then a shot of Santa Maria El Monte for the end of it, and that was it. It was done. It was like amazing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like that's always like the biggest focus, I think, is just being like available to your guests that live in the area.
Yeah, no, I've been lucky to work at a bunch of different kinds of neighborhood bars. Back in Little Rock, the first place I was at, Markham Street Grill and Pub. Shout out Don Dugan.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to work at a place in Fort Place. It was just a divey little hole in the wall strip mall bar next to a Top Golf and a Subway. But we had amazing food. Like we had really, really good food.
Yeah.
And he would have free live music, no cover ever. And then we had a family table at the end of the bar, which was this big round table that was in the way to get into the bar. And there would always be 8 to 12 people there. And that's where I learned that the bar is family. Like these are the people that I saw every single day. But he also had they had an extensive whiskey and scotch collection.
Yeah.
And at that time I was in my mid-20s. And, you learned if you're around my age, you got to know your whiskeys, you got to, cigars, all this stuff to be, manly. Back in those times, that was a real important thing, was to know all that kind of stuff to be
back when men were men.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, we got shift drinks. First time introduced to stuff like this, I was like, I get to drink for free after work, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. I want to try all of these things, and so I just started working my way through all the whiskeys and scotches, and that's what got me into different flavor profiles and then, kind of understanding how spirits kind of play with each other and stuff at my very first job, which was a really important thing because I got to learn and explore without any pressure to make these people, they weren't ordering the cocktails. They weren't doing nothing. They were Bud Light, Miller Lite, shot of tequila, shot of JMO, it was basic. Yeah. But when I moved on, I was able to take that kind of self-learned experience that I gained. And when I was in Nashville at the Gold Rush, which is sadly closed, which is the oldest bar in Nashville, until it did, when I was there. A very, very sad time. They closed after I moved to New York, so yeah,
there's nothing worse than watching like your favorite places close. Like one thing that me and my friends talk about too is this is awful watching all these places close. However, in the spirit of keeping them alive, in about 6 months, we can probably get some money together and reopen them with a bottle of lemon pledge and an order, like week's order of produce, and start them back up again. Well, Don't change the name.
So my idea, this is something that I'm actually, so I have 2 issues that I'm going to be working on this week in calling senators and representatives in my state of New York. And it's about these 2 different issues that I have here in New York.
Where's that?
Where's what? New York.
Never heard of it.
State, the state of New
York.
Oh,
okay. Oh, yeah. Eastern Massachusetts. Okay.
You massholes would never know.
I'm just kidding. I love New York so much.
Who can? It's on a shirt.
It's the most amazing place in the world. It really is.
It's beautiful. I've always dreamed of living here. I'm an Arkansan, born and bred, the biggest hog fan you'll ever see in your life.
Yeah, there you go.
Here. But I always dreamed of urban mass and tall buildings and people and new people and more new people and more new people.
I've wanted to move there for so long.
So it's been depressing in this last year having all of the things that I love about the city kind of go to the wayside. But I'm going to be spending this next week. There's an issue that I have with the current COVID relief bill that's been issued last night, in which they're calling for an additional $400 instead of the $300 for people, which is bullshit. But it's also not taking into account the seriousness of the impact of the hospitality industry. Right now with this, it'll replace on average 86% of people's income nationwide, which definitively does not cover New York, because Wyoming and Alabama and whomever is definitely driving that average down. But there's 5 months of missed income that every single person in the hospitality industry whose bar's closed, and every hotel and every whatever, all of the industries that have been impacted. There's no plan currently right now, or at least I don't understand. That's when I'm calling, get some clarification to see if there's, because they mentioned money for rent. New York City's been talking, I've seen the last couple of days, New Yorkers themselves are behind in rent $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
Just under $1.2 billion. So they were kind of talking about doing something for that. But if there's not any additional relief to go to that, this is just setting up a lot of people for failure, because as soon as society assumes that people are getting taken care of, they kind of close their eyes and turn their back. And they're like, oh, well, you're getting paid. It's like, but no one is making nearly enough to pay off all of these credit cards that they've all of this back pay that they've missed. $2,400 a month.
Yeah.
Of income that they can't use to pay bills or anything else. Especially after people set up their lives based on this. Like the government set up a thing like, hey, this is the plan. We'll give you $600 every week on top of your unemployment, and then we'll figure it out. And then they just took it all away.
Well, and the thing is, like, that's not the point. Like, yeah, you're trying to help, but like $1.2 billion. Hey, Bezos, why don't you just slice out a little bit and wipe it out? Because, like, what else are you doing aside from building your penis-shaped rocket ships?
You want to help society?
Yeah.
Like, help people, directly help people. Don't give to organizations, directly help people.
Yeah. And, like, it's so, like, I'm a big believer in, like, a few things. Everyone deserves a roof over their head. Everyone deserves food on their table, and everyone deserves to have health care. That's pretty simple. And it's funny that whenever they talk about military spending, it's an unlimited budget. And then when they talk about social services, it's like, oh, they're trying to mooch off of you all of a sudden. And it's ridiculous. But also, like, for us, for like the restaurant industry, one thing that drives me nuts, like, and I'm sure you get this, is like, I don't want to go to work just to work. I go because it's enjoyable. I love it. I make people really happy. Like, I don't know if you've ever had to walk one of your drunk guests home or get them a car, but like, like little stuff like that. It's like, it's such a, it takes away from the community so much when it's like, well, you have DoorDash and Uber Eats, so I guess you guys can keep the doors open. It's like, that's not the point. Like, it just, I don't know. And like, everything's taken, like, this year has taken so much out of that and gutted places. And it's just sad to see. It really is.
No, it's tremendously sad to see. But you kind of mentioned, everyone getting together with a bottle of pledge. I think there needs to be something in this bill providing money to people that are in the industry that want to bring it back. People like all of us bartenders. I guarantee you there's bartenders every single place just looking at these empty bars being like, I want that to be my bar.
Yeah.
Let's open these bars. Let's all bring these bars back. But with bartenders that know the industry and know how to get through this thing. Not this, but understand we're going to have there's a potential for some improvement to a lot of bars.
I think there's going to be a really big explosion for that.
The industry had some problems on ownership side.
We've always had owners that we don't care for much.
Yeah, but I think in the last 4 to 5 years, especially in New York, there are a lot of large ownership groups that aren't necessarily contributing to political causes that are going to benefit their employees. They're actively working against their own employees to benefit themselves and raise their profits. So those are the ones I'm mostly referring to. But also, I think everyone needs the opportunity to. I think there needs to be creative, social, hospitality grants. If you have documented experience in a field and you want to do something for yourself in that field, you should be able to go to the government and be like, hey, look, I've been in this field for 5 years. I think I can do this. This is my plans. Here's a grant. Go get it going.
Yeah.
So I think that's how you can build the country back.
I mean, that's definitely true. I always think about it too. Like, there's a lot that goes into it as well, because so New York, like, you walk down the street and there's literally just millions of like little small shops. It was like, you look at that and you're like, you know what, that'd be a great bar. Boston, unfortunately, because they gave up in like 1920 and just started building houses and whatnot, like, you don't have the real estate for it exactly. And now basically all they've been building is just glass towers for people from Dubai to buy and like have them for a week. I remember talking to some guy from Dubai about that, and he was like, yeah, no, I rent this apartment you know, I'm here like once a year for a week. And it's like, dude, that's cool. I mean, that's great, but that doesn't help the city at all. So like the government should like
probably
feel like
because the
loans
building
for
was
stuff
probably built in a TIF district as well, so you're probably not even getting
Yeah.
property tax on the building site.
Yeah, we call it the Seaport. It's basically the Battery Park of Boston. And but like stuff like there's so many of us that we're bartenders. We're not all like financially savvy and whatnot, but we have such a really good vision for things. And I have like a dozen chef friends and bartenders and server friends that are all ready to open a place, and it's getting that assistance for it.
Yeah, it's
And
just
that's why
figuring
like
out.
I say like the bottle of lemon pledge. Like one of my favorite bars is called The Field. It's a Liverpool bar, which I'm a big Liverpool fan. And it's an Irish pub with a pool table, which is not a thing that really exists in Boston anymore, and a dartboard and a patio. And that place is prime, ready to go. But it's in Central Square, so it's probably going to cost like millions of dollars just to purchase it, you know?
Yeah, I'm wondering how the real estate, like when the real estate prices are going to like fully give up and have to just plummet because nothing has been paid and there's no income coming from anywhere in any way. At some point, prices are going to have to come down to compete. So when's that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like it's very different from city to city too, because my buddy just bought a place in Chattanooga, and he got the place for a pretty good. Like he kind of talked the price down on it because of everything going on, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things who were like, even with like 12, people, we're not going to be able to afford the rent anyway because it's just so expensive, and it's one of the things where you're basically priced out. Like my apartment currently is already really expensive, and it's only a 1 bedroom, and it's just the thought of a business too is just incredible because the amount of money you have to spend. Like my last restaurant was $30,000 a month.
See, this is where I think if you can get, I don't know what the parameters would look like. I'm not a legislator, but if you could come up with some sort of program to show. For groups or people that want to go in and open these places where there's obvious need, obviously stuff opens back up and when stuff's going to be good again, to get these frontline workers into those ownership positions. That's what I'm saying. I think that's the key to the hospitality industry kind of recovering is a lot of us bartenders and servers, we need to graduate and take that next step into part ownership, taking control of our situations a little bit more because we haven't had control as bartenders for the most part for a long time, anyone in the hospitality. We're very regulated, and not much else to say.
One of my favorite places in the world is Employees Only, and I assume you've been.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing because they are all like with at least like the graduation to becoming like a part owner and whatnot. And when you have the people that care that much about a place that they never want to go anywhere else, and they just want to be there and be like the staples, like that's something that should be supported. And like
I had a
companies do that a lot too.
For maybe turning this podcast into a bar when things opened up, the unemployed bartender, where we had a open shift night or something for an unemployed bartender to work, or something like that. I don't know how that would work, but
we were doing that at my bar like 2 weeks ago because we had, I think it was like the 9th anniversary of it. This was a couple weeks ago, and we just basically invited every single person that used to work there back to come work a shift for the night. And, obviously like paid them and whatnot. And they, that actually this place like has that nostalgia where people love it so much. Like, yeah, I'll come work for free. But we were like, no, you're going to get paid as well. Like, and just like things like that, like little stuff like that goes a long way. And it just shows you who's there that cares and who's there that does not care.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to talk more about this stuff, but we're going to talk, like I said before, we're going to talk again entirely about this book that I'm not going to talk about right now, but
we'll get to it.
We will. Right now, what I want to do is let's hear this cocktail that you have for us.
For the home cocktail, yeah. So one of my favorites, again, not too expensive. I made this great drink. I think it's great. Called the Spaghetti Western.
It's tremendous.
And it's oh yeah. So it's basically it was inspired by like the spaghetti Western films from Italy. So it's rye whiskey, Cocchi Americano, which is like a dry vermouth, like fortified wine, a little bit on the sweeter side. Moletti Amaro, which is great because again, like it's like $20 a bottle and it's delicious. And then just stirred that and served on the rocks, and then a lemon peel. And it was like one of our biggest selling cocktails there. But
what's the measurements on that, or is it 111?
111, and then 2 dashes of the whiskey barrel aged bitters by Fee Brothers, which is one of my favorites because it's got that great like cinnamon notes to it, a little bit of like cardamom bark and whatnot. So it's like very nice, and that's one of my favorite drinks ever.
And what was it called again?
The Spaghetti Western.
All right, yeah, I could get down with that. I like little Italy, little America.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Wild West meets the sophisticated peninsula.
Yeah, and a little silly too.
Yes, I do like. I like whimsical things. It's part of some of my training that I got.
Yeah, awesome. What's your Venmo or Cash App? I like to make sure that everyone, like I said, we like to offer this. You're bartending for this shift, so I want to make sure people can tip you if they like the cocktail or if they make it and want to share it back with you. What's a good way that people could share photos or?
My Venmo is Luke Graham 14.
All right, all together. Is there a dash or anything?
I think it's Luke-Graham 14. I think, but I'm not worried about it either way. It's been more than a pleasure.
Yeah,
to talk to you. So that's enough payment for me.
Well, I appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming on the show too.
Yeah, anytime.
So we're gonna get out of here. We've done it. We've recorded a podcast right at 30 minutes. Really excited that I hit all my cues and notes there. So it's like the perfect podcast guest bartender episode. So I really appreciate it. At the end of every episode, I like to hop on service, let you get on point, close this thing out however you like. And that time is now.
I would just say next time we should talk about service bar. But aside from that, if you go out to the restaurants that are still open, tip excessively because the people need it. And I think that they deserve it too. I'm not going to say that the bartender is the same as a nurse, but we are still out there, and you're getting our services too. So just make sure to take care of your people. Be patient. If something is out, it's out for a reason. So that's all really I have to say for that.
Well, that works because that's all the time we have. So
all right, Keith.
All right. Well, like I said, I really appreciate Mr. Graham, Luke Graham. How can we follow you on all the socials?
My Instagram is On the Rocks or Up.
On the Rocks or Up.
Yep.
All right. That's on Instagram. Make sure you follow him there. Of course, you can follow us at the UB Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. www.theubpodcast.com. We also have a Patreon now. Make sure you go check it out. Donate whatever you want or don't do anything at all. I don't care. I'm just doing this for fun. But if you really like what you hear and you want to hear more, think about patronizing us. We will probably have an episode next week since it's the new year. I've got so used to having this 3-week break that I'm like, I forgot kind of how to do a podcast. And I don't remember how I closed the show, but I'm going to close it like this. I'll see you guys at the bar.